Hello, and thank you for listening to the podcast. We appreciate it, and we appreciate a lot of help from a lot of people all throughout this journey. So we've got a couple of shout-outs we're going to make here. The first shout-out being to Beck Sutton, the graphics designer who is designing our logo. She is the creator and owner of Primal Studios, which can be found on Facebook. Or if you go to primalst.com, you'll be able to find her work there, and she is fantastic at what she does.
Yeah, and the second shout out we'd like to make is to Andrew Stanton, composer of the song Escape the Oppression, which is the kick-ass song for our intro. We love the song, we love the dude. You can check out more of his stuff on soundstripe.com, where there's plenty of songs by plenty of other artists as well, where you can license for podcasts. So go check it out and see what's on there and see what you can use.
Stay frosty. Hello and welcome to The Songs That Made Us, the podcast that wants to say condolences to the family of Eddie Van Halen, obviously guitarist of Van Halen. It would be remiss of us on a music podcast not to mention him, even if it means starting out in a slightly more morbid and sobering tone than usual.
Yeah, more somber than usual, but you know, it's worth it because he was a great guitarist, man. Great dude, great guitarist. Whether you like Van Halen or not, me personally, I was never a glam rock fan, so I've never really liked Van Halen, but I have always thought of him as a fucking amazing guitarist, and I love the stuff that he used to do with Michael Jackson and stuff.
Well, the whole Beat It solo is like one of the iconic solos of all time. You listen to like Eruption, that 1.5 minute, 1 minute 50 seconds with just him playing guitar and shredding. He was introducing tapping before people were doing it on a more mainstream basis as well on the guitar. So he was revolutionary in his own way, regardless of whether or not you liked Van Halen.
Yeah, he was always great to listen to. Like whether you want to listen to all of their songs or a song all the way through, you could just take a clip of any of their solos or something like that, and he was always excellent.
Well, yeah, and if you do want to check out the genius of Eddie Van Halen on the guitar, like I said, Beat It, the solo in that is phenomenal. The guitar in Hot for Teacher is fucking ridiculous. Even a song like Jump, which is a really terrible song, but his guitar solo is fucking amazing. And of course Eruption, which is sort of his masterpiece, I suppose you would call it.
Yeah, it's something that every guitarist has listened to and is like, what? I want to be able to do that.
Yeah, every 12-year-old who picks up guitar and hears Eruption for the first time immediately turns to gain and distortion up and tries doing this whole tapping shit. It's it's a sad day obviously for the Van Halen family in particular. Guys like David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar as well, who have rocked out with him for decades.
Yeah,
but we are going to be casting our minds back on this episode to a time 25 years ago.
Back when we were both one.
I would have been as of today, I would be one. In a month's time, I would be two. When this episode comes out, it'll be less than a month. but you know. So, even though we started topical, this episode will be delayed, so our condolences will be somewhat later.
Yeah.
But yes, we're going to be looking at two albums this time around, which both came out around similar times 25 years ago in the hallowed days of 1995.
And they're very 90s albums. That's something I'd say off the bat.
100%. It's sort of tail end of grunge.
Yeah.
I think at this point, Kurt Cobain had already, his life had passed.
Yeah.
I
didn't mean to laugh. It's because I knew for a fact that you wanted to make some sort of morbid joke, and you didn't. Well done.
Oh no, I remember something I said. Do you remember? I think he was called Simon, the bloke who used to worked in the school, but he was like a guitar teacher kind of bloke.
Yes, yeah, I do. Yeah.
Fucking hated him. Told me my bass sounded like shit. I mean, I'd only been playing for 3 months. I had no fucking idea, but I'm like, whoa, this is a Fender Squire. How dare you? But I remember we actually got on for a little bit when I was in one of the Splinter bands. Um, one of the many warring factions, like a fucking really shit Game of Thrones episode. But we were talking about, I think we were going to be covering Lithium at the time.
Yeah.
And obviously, anyone who knows Nirvana and Lithium, that bass line's fucking solid. It's a cracking song.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like Come As You Are and MTV Unplugged, and I think Simon said something along the lines of, oh, well, he lost the sort of top end of his voice at that point. And I went, yeah, it was only a year or so where he lost the top end of his head. So I've already made my jokes previously.
Yeah. You got them out of the system.
Yeah, I got them out when I was 15, so I don't need to be doing it again. No, Kurt Cobain was a legend.
Oh, yeah, complete legend.
Don't mean any disrespect. Like, I've got no issues with him
No,
or his
no,
estate.
But yeah, it was the tail end of grunge, and also you had bands, British bands and whatnot, especially when you're talking about Radiohead, coming out like Blur and Oasis. And
well, this is sort of the years where Britpop in the UK takes over.
Exactly, and it definitely has a certain style of guitar. It's more in the guitar. You can really hear it in that, and they all play in a very similar way with the same sort of chords. And yeah, you can hear that a lot with this Radiohead album.
We didn't introduce the albums yet.
Yeah. No, teasing.
So before we get into the minutiae of the guitars and the influences they probably would have got from Johnny Marr, the first album isn't that, by the way. The first album is has more of the grunge elements and sort of alt rock from America because it's an American band. The first Smashing Pumpkins, their seminal album, really, Mellon Collie and the Infinite Sadness.
Yeah, a massive album in more ways than one.
Exactly, which we'll get onto in a minute. And the second album, as Connor's already mentioned, is Radiohead's 1995, The Bends, which is their second album. Which is their sophomoric album, as they would call it in the biz.
Yeah. Which some people would say is their best album. It's up for debate.
Yeah, that's really up for debate, considering how fucking strong
OK Computer is.
Oh yeah, OK Computer is fucking phenomenal as well. So there's a real struggle. But I think what we'll do, before we look at the UK music scene and delve into that side of it, we're going to go across the Atlantic. We're going to go to America. We're going to go to Smashing Pumpkins. And we're going to talk about them first. I sound like a fucking radio host now.
You did. That was it. We're going to talk. I was expecting a sort of jingle to play after you said we're going to talk about Smashing Pumpkins, and then
it was like I was thrown into a bit. It was great.
And suddenly it was like, "Disarm you with a smile,"
which isn't on this album. That was on this album.
Yeah. No, that would be in tune with us getting everything wrong.
Yeah, it would be. So the first thing to mention with Smashing Pumpkins at this time, this is sort of their iconic lineup as well for the band. So Billy Corgan, everyone knows, the lead singer, guitarist,
most distinguishable voice out of America at that time, probably.
Oh yeah. Distinguishable is one way of putting it. I'd say whiny, but like in a way that works.
Yeah.
Jimmy Chamberlain, who was a drummer.
James
Here. Yeah, I don't know if I ever really like when I first listened to Smashing Pumpkins, I never, because a lot of it, like when I first listened to it, I wasn't as musically talented as I am now. I wasn't as actually knowledgeable as I am now. So like knowing the difference between a great drummer and a drummer who can just do a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's you do miss out on it initially, but yes, Jimmy Chamberlain was a really good drummer. James Ehar was lead guitar, and Darcy Retzky was the bassist.
Real solid lineup. Real solid lineup.
Oh god, yeah. This is what I mean when I say it's their sort of their iconic lineup. Yeah,
and they're a proper solid band, man. They're really, if you're into that kind of thing, and we'll get into it in a bit, I'm sure, but especially when you're a teenager full of angst, full of darkness, you know, this is one of the best bands to get into at that time, and especially this album, really.
Do you want a quote from Billy Corgan about that?
Yeah.
the album itself obviously was about angst, sorrow, things like that. It was aimed at those between the ages of 14 and 24 because
There
that's
you
when
go.
those things most, or when you tend to have the not when you experience it the most, I suppose, but when you're more attuned to that kind of thing. So as an album, it is a double album. However,
Sure.
some people say it's, I can't remember if it's like day and night first and second disc.
Yeah.
But I think Billy Corgan himself is shied away from saying it's a concept album or anything like that. It's just a double album.
Yes.
Because he was inspired by the Beatles and doing a sort of double album like that, which I'm not going to comment on now. The one thing to note about this album, first off, now, previously on a couple of the episodes, we've sort of gone through songs on the album, song by song, and we decided actually
not going to do that with this one because we will be here forever.
Yeah, we tried it with Stadium Arcadium. That's roughly the same amount of songs, so not a great idea. But we're going to shy away from doing that anyway. We're going to talk about the album in a whole, its cultural impact, our general thoughts on it. But first thing I'm going to mention, if I were just to grab you and say, name me, 3 Smashing Pumpkins songs, apart from Disarm, which you've already sung at us.
Yeah.
What would be 3 songs that you would think of instantly, right off the bat, without thinking?
I mean, it would instantly be like Tonight, but I think that was one of the first songs I'd ever heard of Smashing Pumpkins. I would always say Disarm as well, but obviously already mentioned that. But then you got like stuff like Zero, and the biggest one is Bullets with Butterfly Wings. Like everyone knows that.
And bear in mind, you could also go for 1979 would be one, or then you'll be looking more towards sort of little bits after that, where it'd be sort of Ava Door and stuff like that.
Yeah, but for the most part, essentially, and I assume this is what you're hinting towards.
Yes, I am.
Apart from Disarm or some of the other like bigger hits, almost every song from Smashing Pumpkins will be from this album, or any song you really love. Especially if you're not necessarily a huge fan, but you like, you dip in and out. It's you're not buying all of their merch or anything like that, but you're like, yeah, I don't mind Smashing Pumpkins. And you've got like maybe 10 songs on your phone of them. Chances are almost all 10 of them are from this album.
Well, I think the only song that I could think of where it would be people would know it instantaneously would be Today, which again I think was on Siamese Dreams.
Yeah. It's a great song. I forgot about Today. It's a really good song.
Yeah, well, that's also fitting for this year as well, because that's a song about committing suicide.
Yeah. Bringing it back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, keeping with the overall theme of this podcast.
Yeah.
That's the line of like pink ribbon scars and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is also a great song. Last thing, so whilst their back catalogue up until this point was solid with the occasional sort of spike of a great song, this was the album that sort of launched them from very good alt/grungy kind of rockers to mainstream success, effectively.
Completely.
And
it's them at the top of their game, and they're doing it really fucking well. For the style, for the genre of music, it's, to be honest, like we're going to come into some comments about this album in a minute, because obviously, well, I'm no longer 14, so I don't necessarily dig this music as much as I used to, and I have a lot of things to say. But if I'm being objective and saying, if you like this genre of music, this is going to be one of the most quintessential albums that you need to listen to. And it's known as great for good reason. I mean, it is a solid album. If you were being objective, like, song after song is really fucking good.
Now, we refuse to be objective, so instead we're going to be entirely subjective about it. It's fucking long.
It's too long.
It is
too long. And it's hard because it's not bad as well. Like, I was listening through it, and this is my first time ever listening through this album, because I've never been a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. Do like one or two songs, but yeah. So this is the first time listening through this album, and it was a weird experience because I'm like, I like every song. Every song is decent. Every song is well made. But my fucking god, does it just keep going on?
Yeah, you get to a certain point, like after you get past sort of Bullet with Butterfly Wings, which is song number 6, there's this huge break between song number 6 and song number 19, which is 1979. So
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
like list of songs that you don't know, and
they're still good. They're still really good. Like, I was surprised by a few, like songs like Galapagos, I really fucking loved. And I'd never heard that before. But it's just it's it's when like bands have had a really long span, and then at the end when they split up, like Queen or something, or Deep Purple, there'll be like the greatest hits of them, or the do you know what I mean, like the quintessential hits of Queen or Deep Purple. So then it will be an album with like 50 songs on it, and there's no way you're listening through that from start to finish, but you're like, yeah, I know all of these songs, so one day I may listen to this, one day it feels like that, but it's not because it isn't a whole culmination of their whole career's work. It's just one album they brought out at once.
Yeah, which on the one hand, this is where I think, like in previous episodes, like going a ways back now, sort of when we're talking about self-producing, and sort of obviously they didn't self-produce this album, but having that insight to be able to kind of curtail yourself after a certain point, because there's sort of double albums are a bit of a sticky wicket. They can either be amazing, like Stadium Arcadium, where the album feels like it's constantly changing and moving and there's always sort of forward motion, or it can be like this, where it's a really solid album and there's some fucking amazingly great peaks, but then there's just this sort of straight line of
I think
similitude.
Exactly, and I think the problem is as well is the genre of music, because with this genre of music, I mean, they do a lot. They stretch the boundaries as much as they can, but at the end of the day, those boundaries are much closer together than other genres. If you were going into like indie or like we'll talk about more later, but like Radiohead, they don't really sit within a genre and they get to play around and they have so much freedom, and you'll see that in the differences between their different albums. But,
exactly.
Yeah, but with this kind of grungy, angsty rock, there's only so much you can do. So it's, even though every song is really solid and distinguishable, it still sounds samey.
Yeah, I think that's where the issue comes in, because it's all about having some sort of momentum throughout the album to keep you going.
Yeah.
Whereas this sort of feels like it reaches a certain point, then it plateaus out for a long time. Yeah. Then you peak up again, and then but yeah, there were some sort of underrated songs that, like, I listened to this album thinking well over a decade ago initially, and haven't really listened to it since, other than sort of the obvious ones when I'm sort of dicking about on bass.
Yeah.
But the thing, there are some high points in the songs that I didn't really remember or didn't know. For me, XYU was that.
Dude, XYU is a really excellent song. I thought the same thing, and one for me as well. I made a note of it. What is it?
Through the Eyes of Ruby.
No, I didn't mind that. What is the song?
No, I quite like that.
An Ode to No One. I'd never heard that song before. An Ode to No One. It's a much more upbeat song on the album.
I've just seen my note to it. My note next to it is Another Hard Bastard.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of like that riff.
Yeah, I had never heard that song ever in my life before, and then the second it started playing, I was like, fuck me, this song is so fucking good. Like, the second it starts with the drums and everything, and I was like, this is way more upbeat, and this is a little bit more hard, and I like it.
Well, it's grabbing you by the balls and dragging you someplace.
Completely, man.
But I felt that.
And that's what I love. I love being dragged by the balls.
Well, yeah, so we've heard. But for me, like, that first album is like standout for the most part. Stuff like Here Is No Why is fucking really awesome. Zero is an amazing song. I love that song. Jelly Belly's great. To Forgive was great. An Ode to No One was great. And then you had like Love, which I thought tonally sounded like an early try of them doing A Verdure later on.
Yeah.
It's weird sort of feel. Like,
there are some weird soppy songs. On this album. I've always found that about Tonight actually, which is obviously one of their biggest songs, and I've never minded Tonight. I think it's a good song, but it just is a bit like whiny and soppy. I don't know.
I have a question for you to pop you on the spot. 1979.
Yeah.
Do you remember what film that we both love that it's used in like a little montage scene?
No.
Clerks 2.
Ah, right. Yes. Okay.
When Dante is having to drive out after, I think it's when. Yeah, it's when Rosario's character, I've forgotten what her name is in the Rosario Dawson.
Yeah.
But she tells Dante she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And he drives around and he sees like the kid in the diner, which is actually Kevin Smith's kid, Harley.
Yeah.
And you've got 1979 playing, and it's this really cool little scene.
Yeah.
So anytime I hear that, I always have like a big old smile because I'm like, oh yeah, it's from seen it in Flex.
But that's the thing. So one of the things I want to say is like, what surprised me, what I did really enjoy, is that actually I think my favorite songs from the album ended up being songs that I didn't know, and maybe it's because it's the first time listening to them. But you know, I was coming into this fully expecting like 1979 is going to be one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite. You know, I'm gonna love Bullet with Butterfly Wings, and everything else is gonna be pretty good, but meh. But actually, it ended up being stuff like, like Galapagos and everything, like Galapagos or something like that.
Galapagos. It's
Galapagos.
The islands.
The islands, yeah, you know.
No, we were taught this at school.
Yeah, but it's songs like that I was actually like surprised by, and I think they ended up some of my favorites on the album.
Yeah, that's going to make it a lot fucking harder when it comes to guessing it later.
Yeah, it is.
I think mine's probably going to be quite obvious, actually, when we get to it.
Yeah,
just
maybe.
think of the type of shit I like. Although there's a lot of choices, I suppose, for that on this album.
Yeah, it's surprisingly, like, from the intro, I was like, wait. So Jake's already warned me this is going to be a really hard, like, long listen. Is there going to be, like, some weird interludes of symphony and orchestra that's just going to be there for no fucking reason? And then, but then from then on, it basically gets pretty hard pretty quick. I don't get the intro. I don't know why that intro's there. I suppose they do use symphony in and out, but
I think it meshes well when you get to Tonight's Night.
Yeah,
it fits in perfectly with that. And then same with Farewell and Goodnight is the end song.
Yeah,
like I like that sort of bookending the album with both of those.
Yeah, I get that, and also like I instantly thought of Disarm again. And like, because Disarm is probably my favorite Smashing Pumpkins song. I love Disarm a lot. But they do use orchestra in a really good way sometimes, which I was expecting more from in this album. They do use it in and out to sort of make something a bit more grand or epic.
Yeah, that's what it seems like they're trying to do. It's like, so when anyone thinks of poetry, you think of a few verses.
Yeah.
Or a stanza here and a stanza there. What you don't think of when you think of poetry, you don't automatically go to Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, which is an epic poem, which is fucking massive, which is basically what this is.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that
compared to normal poems. But I think what I'm going to do, I've got a bit of an analogy I want to test out.
Okay.
For my feelings on this album. So this is going to tie in actually. So one of the interesting facts for me for Billy Corgan. Well, actually, let me tell you a horrifying fact first.
Okay.
So originally, it was not going to be 28 songs long.
Right.
28.
Oh, no.
20 fucking 8. Do you want to know how long it was going to be initially?
Oh, I don't know.
32.
Fuck me.
That would have been too much.
Yeah, well, it already is too much.
Exactly. That's it. Like, part of my issue with the album is I think you can condense the album down and you've got hit after hit after hit after hit.
Or like you just release them at different times as different albums.
Yeah, but then you end up with like the load reload scenario where if one doesn't work, you've already got the second album that needs to be put out.
Yeah, I get that. But so, I will give them like credit on their creativity to churn out that 32 songs.
It's probably a lot more than that they actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was just
to churn out that much quality, and it's all quality as well. Like, there's not a bad song really.
No, I think it's just. Yeah, I think it's just a case that they aren't as good as some of the stuff. That's where the issue is, because then it does feel like a bit of a drag.
Yeah, it definitely gave me more respect for Smashing Pumpkins. Like, I always knew they were a good band, really talented magicians.
I've seen Billy Corgan's acts where you're pulling like fucking pulling hankies out of his sleeve and pulling out a hat.
No, I've always known them to be like obviously really talented musicians. But actually listening to this album, I was like, oh my god, like they're a really good band. Like, there's not a bad song.
Well, yeah, it's definitely an insight of like this band where you think, well, they've got creativity in spurts, but
Yeah.
as it turns out, they're just fucking massively creative. And I don't know how much of that is Billy. And how
Yeah,
much
because
that,
he seems to
oh,
really headline. Like,
well, he does nowadays.
yeah,
Obviously, back then they were more of a unit, but I think he to me always seemed like the creative driving force. And I'm pretty sure he said on sort of, I think it was on the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan Experience, where he was talking about like the main thing that came between this lineup of the band was sort of, drugs and money, basically.
yeah,
With the money side of things, of his management saying, well, you should be getting X% because you write all of
more,
this and
yeah,
like that kind of thing, which is fair enough. So I think a lot of it is his driving force and his desire to create. And if when you hit that purple patch, when you write fucking everything
yeah.
you can, and like it's coming out of you song after song after song, you can understand why it's a double album.
Yeah, completely. I think it's just part of being an artist is like knowing when to stop. I mean, like, so one of my all-time favorite bands is a band called Tame Impala. I love Tame Impala completely, but a criticism they get quite a bit is some of their songs are like 8 minutes long, and it can be like quite samey. And
Yeah.
one of the criticisms they get is like, it just if you cut 2 minutes out of that song, it would be perfect or something like that. I personally love every song, so I have never found that problem because it's supposed to be like a trippy experience. They're supposed to meander, but like, yeah, it's down to personal opinion. But it is good to know when to stop, and I feel like with this album, they they did too much.
So here's where my analogy comes in. So Billy Corgan, I don't know if you know sort of some of the stuff he does outside the music business.
No, I don't.
Well, let me educate you, young man, because I've got facts. So Billy Corgan has also been, well, he still is. He is a owner of a wrestling organization and promoter of
Sick.
same. So I think originally it was Resistance Pro Wrestling. I can't remember where it's based out of. I know it's in the US. He used to own them, but then he went to Impact Wrestling, formerly known as TNA, if people are into wrestling. Then there was a bit of a fuck up with the owners there, and Billy Corgan. Things went sideways, and he left, and he ended up buying the National Wrestling Alliance, which, for people who grew up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, who were massive wrestling fans, National Wrestling Alliance was that
Big.
was your main. Well, yeah, they covered the whole territory system in the USA. So apart from like the odd outsiders like Bill Watts in Mid South in the WWF,
Yeah.
and Vern Gagne with the AWA in I think it's Minnesota, that was the NWA was essentially the governing body for all wrestling companies.
Yeah.
But with the expansion of Vince McMahon in the WWF, he killed off the territories effectively, and they couldn't compete with his money and him just buying up the stars and all that kind of jazz. But so he owns this historic company, is helping revive this company. It may never, well, it's likely not ever going to reach the same heights that it did in the 80s, but
Yeah.
it's nice to know that he loves that bit of history and as a wrestling buff. And a massive fan of NWA wrestling, and in particular Mid-Atlantic and Jim Crockett Promotions and Georgia Championship Wrestling and things like that.
You admire him quite a bit.
I admire him for that because it shows his love. But my analogy comes in here. Now, when you were growing up watching wrestling, we grew up in the 90s. You had
Yeah.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, you had your Rock, Triple H,
Yeah.
Mankind, Undertaker, all that. We grew up in the Attitude Era for wrestling.
Yeah.
Any wrestling fan, even casual fans, are going to know the Attitude Era was
Yeah.
the time when the company, they dipped in the early 90s, like the whole wrestling business did. WWE felt it harsh or harsher than a lot. So by the time you get to the mid to late 90s, they're sort of trying the new generation, they're trying things. And then a chap called Vince Russo comes along and starts putting his creative ideas in, which led to effectively a massive period of hotshotting of the wrestling business, which has then pretty much killed the wrestling business since. So what I'm trying to say is, in hindsight, everyone grows up and everyone who grew up like us watched the Attitude Era and loved it with fucking, well,
Yeah.
The Rock just Ken Shamrock in the face with a chair. It's fucking amazing. There's blood, there's swearing, there's sex. It's all going crazy. D-Generation X are out here doing crotch chops. But in
The
hindsight,
Undertaker killed Kane and all of that.
oh yeah, exactly. Like, we had the debut of Kane when we were kids.
Yeah.
How fucking awesome was that? But in hindsight, when you look at it, 20 years hence,
Yeah.
you look at it and go, like, I've rewatched every fucking episode of WWE Raw.
Yeah.
From 1995, January 95, through till sort of start of 2002.
Yeah.
So pretty much the end of the Attitude Era. So I've watched it start to finish in the Attitude Era, including I watched the SmackDowns when they came out in 99. I've watched all the pay-per-views. And this is obviously since, like, after.
Yeah. And it's just a bit corny.
It's quite shit. For the most part, everything about it sucks apart from Stone Cold, The Rock. That's the reason that it blew up, basically.
Yeah.
And this is what I felt like listening to this album. 25 years ago, this album would have been cutting edge.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. I feel like it was perfect for the time, and that's why it blew up, and it's excellent. And like we said, that all the songs are really great. But the problem is that it's more of a genre thing. It fits in its genre so well, and that genre hasn't stuck around for a reason. And it's not the same as bands like Nirvana, because Nirvana had something else that, like, gave them longevity. Like, it still stands out.
You think about Nirvana, though, they also switched up massively between albums. You think of the difference between Nevermind and In Utero.
Completely.
It's night and day.
Yeah.
Whereas this is effectively 2 albums. Well, you could argue it's technically 3 albums condensed into one, but they all sound similar. So you're getting 3 albums worth, if you say an album's, roughly sort of 12, 13 songs, So it's kind of like, like all your singles are there, but
it just kind of sits in the time too well. It doesn't, like, there's just, I don't know what it is, because again, like I said, everything in it is really good. It's just that style of music doesn't speak to me really anymore. And like,
if you look at a painting and it's a painting of a beautiful landscape,
and
then you've got like these big bright spots, you're like, oh, the bright spots are nice, but the landscape's just a landscape.
Exactly.
It sounds like I'm coming up with these analogies on the fly. Apart from the Attitude Era, I had that one planned.
No, but it's like I mean, we started the podcast talking about Van Halen, so it's like glam rock as well. Like, there's a reason we don't have really glam rock anymore. And you look back at most glam rock and you go, oh, that was kind of shitty. I know a load of people are still fans, but they can't. They need to get their heads out of the past.
Are you about to insult Motley Crue? Are you about to insult?
I hate Motley Crue.
I know what podcast we're doing next.
Yeah,
we're doing Shout at the Devil.
But it's like bands like Motley Crue and Kiss and stuff. They were great at the time for many reasons, and I understand why people at the time fucking loved them. But there's no way you can go back now and listen to it and go, oh yeah, no, it's solid music. Maybe you can. Maybe I'm just being a bit of a dick. But like, I listened to all of that stuff, and granted, I was never a big fan to begin with, so I've got a really biased opinion. But I listened to that stuff and I go, I just don't get it. Maybe I had to live at the time, and it kind of feels like that with this. Like, when I was younger and I was like, and this sort of music was, only just going out of fashion.
Well, we were the sort of rock and metal crew anyway, so we were always more angsty and like,
completely,
give us hard riffs, bitch.
But yeah, it's just there's a reason it didn't stick around. And like, I mean, if you think about, for example, grunge, like, the only grunge band that's stood the test of time really is Nirvana. You could argue as well, Pearl Jam, but Pearl Jam never really stuck to grunge either.
I think Pearl Jam were certainly more adventurous musically, but that's the thing. Like, I don't want to label this album as grunge, because it's not. It's really sort of the starting, not necessarily the starting point, I suppose, but alt rock.
It is, yeah, and it definitely has grunge influence, I'd say.
Yeah, it has grunge influence. It came around in the same era, but I think with alt rock, like, you don't really think about those bands until sort of late 90s, early 2000s, alongside new metal and things like that. So this was sort of the birthing period as well for that. So it's sort of this mishmash where you've got the loud aggressive riffs of your sort of grunge bands, and then you've got the sort of more artsy stuff of alt rock where you've got stuff like Tonight's Night, 1979.
It was kind of like a phase. That's the way to put it. And
and your emo phase.
Exactly, mate. I was listening to this album thinking like, oh yeah, I could really skateboard right now, sort of thing. Like it's one of those. And
bear in mind he was thinking that sort of 12 years after the fact. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I just think it's really excellent, really decent. And if you like that style of music, you need to listen to this album because it's brilliant. It's probably the peak of that style of alt rock, and you're not going to get much better than it. But it's just, it just doesn't work anymore. Yeah, that's it. It hasn't aged well.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. It has aged. It's what we should say. It's aged. Yeah. But that's the thing. The great songs on the album, though, would still be great songs in any era.
Completely.
That's the thing. Like, I think this is why I'm super critical of the album in my own head, because there are some amazing songs on this album. If they had, I don't know, I think if they'd shortened it down, it would have been such a fucking masterpiece.
If you made this 10 songs, it would be excellent. Absolutely phenomenal. If you cut the album in half.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, so you can start with, Mellon Collie and have that little piano intro and go into Tonight's Night. They got Jelly Belly, Zero, Here Is No I, Butterfly Wings. Then you could throw in, To Forgive and Ode to No One, Galapagos you can go to as well.
That's the thing, but for those slower songs that build and stuff like that, and all of them are excellent, but you only really need one on an album.
Well,
mix it up.
Now, what I will do, to play devil's advocate here for a second, how much do you reckon it's because we're sort of on a time limit when we have to re-listen to stuff?
Yeah.
Although this one was sort of weeks in the making, like the time limit was self-imposed because we thought we were recording one day and we didn't. So we're there like, we've got to cram it in, and it's 28 songs, and I'm sat there like in the middle of work basically with this album playing like, is it fucking ended yet?
That's true. It could be the context of of how we're listening to it, but I don't know as well. I think the criticisms we have are justified anyway. But the thing is, I feel like, to give them credit, I don't think they gave a shit about it being a full work of art and how much people listen to it as a full project. They just wanted to make these songs, and that's why they churned out so many, and they don't care whether people get bored.
Well, that should be why you get into music. It's you're putting your self-identity out there in the world. It doesn't matter.
And exactly, and from that point of view, it's brilliant. It's brilliantly done. And you know what? You can't argue with people churning out that much content. As boring as it could get, and as hard as it is to listen to, it's kind of weird to complain about a good band churning out a lot of great music.
It's only hard to listen to because a bunch of the songs on there are good and not great, which is really, like, as far as criticisms go, it's not a bad criticism to have. You've got a bunch of good songs. It's
a fucking solid album. It is a great album. It is a great album. It's just a long ass album.
Yeah, you've got to devote 60 years of your life to listening to it for the first time. The one thing that I think would probably scare people off today as well, because I listened to it on Spotify, which has got the anniversary edition, where it's got like all these additional discs on there with like demos and all that as well. So it's like 7 hours of listening.
Yeah,
I only listened to the fucking two main discs. Obviously, I didn't go deeper. I didn't have the time. Yeah. But, what I will say though is, like, after this, they end up appearing on The Simpsons.
Yeah,
it's one of my all-time favorite Simpsons moment of Billy Corgan introduced himself to Homer Simpson and going, Billy Corgan smashing pumpkins, and Homer replying with, Homer Simpson smiling awkwardly, which I always loved. Just little things.
It's one of those albums that I if someone turned around to me and said this is their favorite album of all time, I would go, I can't argue with that. Yeah, I understand why it could be your favorite album of all time, and I understand why it stood the test of time and why it's a big deal.
Now, in this shit sandwich that we're delivering here, where we started out with like a nice bit of the start, big part of the and then I'm gonna close it up on this album and sort of I'm gonna pick out some highlights. and talk about the great stuff on this album, because there is a lot of great stuff as well. So, as we already touched on, like, the main singles from this album that people are going to know, you've got Tonight Tonight, Bullet with Butterfly Wings. What a fucking song that is.
Yeah.
That is just a perfect fucking heavy song.
Pretty sure that's your favourite.
It's not.
Oh.
Yeah. There's another one on there which just edges it out. It's not one of the singles, actually, either.
Okay.
But it's probably one of the more known songs from the album without it being a single. But yeah, 1979 as well. Like, there's a reason people know those songs.
Yeah.
And still know those songs. Why those songs are still relevant. They're
still
just
used in TV shows and films.
Well, yeah, and then like the other great songs, like Jelly Belly's fucking amazing as well. Zero's amazing. The songs you've touched on, Tales of Scorched Earth.
Yeah.
Which
the writing is really good, by the way.
Exactly.
We haven't mentioned that. The lyrics are really excellent.
Exactly. I think Billy Corgan's always great with that, and he's always great, writing guitar riffs and fucking dicking about with guitar.
There's a lot of iconic stuff that he's really good at making iconic stuff. Just like the world is a vampire. It's just such like a perfect intro to a song.
Oh god, yeah. But like that's the thing, even some of the stuff that people wouldn't know, like Through the Eyes of Ruby, Stumbling, XYU was phenomenal. I love that song. And that's not my favourite, by the way. Just putting it out there.
I'm gonna re-guess. I think I could know.
I reckon you will. It has possibly. I'll tell you what my favourite lyric is from it as well when we get to it.
Yeah.
But I think what we'll do is, I don't think there's much else we can say about this album. It's a really great album in parts.
Musically, and musically solid as well. Like the guitar's excellent, drums are excellent. Song composition can get a bit samey. Like that could be another thing I'd say, is that the songs are a bit flat. They don't. Some of them build, like Galapagos builds really nicely, but for the most part, a lot of the songs are quite, from the first second of the track to the end of the track, it stays quite the same, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because plenty of great songs do that, but that is just an observation.
So, Mr. Reed, give me a grade.
I'm going to give it a solid, I'm going to give it a B+.
I'll give it a C-. Well,
I feel like you've been really nice about it, and now you're like, yep, solid album, C-.
I think it was my experience of listening to it was a lot of boredom.
Yeah, fair.
Of amazing songs, and then just these good songs, which just left me like going, eh.
Yeah, fair.
Still going, is this the same song? I don't know anymore. It's locked into that headspace. So C-, whilst it sounds very low and crass, it's a C- if you take out all the additional stuff that really didn't need to be on there. It would have been a solid B + A,
Yeah.
But I think you should give the album a try.
Yeah,
because at the very least, there's going to be 10 songs which are fucking amazing. Yeah,
and I'll tell you what, it'll give you a lot of nostalgia. Because, this sort of music doesn't get made anymore, and this genre has sort of died out or changed, and these guys were probably, the best that did it.
Exactly, at that time, and there's great songs on there. That's the issue I have. Great songs. Yeah. Why do you have to make it 28 fucking songs? Now, I'm going to guess your favourite song.
Go.
Part of me thinks you've mentioned it 100 times already.
I have. No, it's not Galapagos.
Oh, no, wait, no. Was it an Ode to No One?
Yes, it is an Ode to No One. But I do love Galapagos as well.
Yeah, because you mentioned that 1,000 times, so I was thinking that's got to be it.
Because I liked Galapagos because it was very different from a lot of the other songs. Mostly that just happened previously to it, and I did like the way that builds. And when a song builds for me, it does something to me. I like a song that builds to like a crescendo.
It's that thing of it feels like it's taking you on a journey, and I know that's going to sound really corny to some people, but that's what you kind of want from any art or any music. It makes you feel something.
But then an Ode to No One from the second the drums side, and it's probably like the thing is with this genre of music as well is it can be quite sluggish and like dun 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 dun, like slow tempo, but an Ode to No One is much more upbeat and hard, and I like it.
Well, what we'll do, I think yours is 0.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it is 0. I was gonna say we'll average out our grade, so we'll give it like a B in total.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, 0 for me. That fucking guitar riff is it's heavy, it's mean. And I feel the lyrics. Like that, as you know about me, I lyric mad, motherfucker. But you've got that little break verse where it just like the music cuts out and it's just, Billy Corgan going, emptiness is loneliness, loneliness is cleanliness, and cleanliness is godliness, and God is empty, just like me. I was like, oh, I fucking love that. And then it goes into the next.
My soul.
Yeah, it's that nihilistic stupidity that I have that always lasts with me. And then like the next verse as well kicks in with intoxicated with my madness, I'm in love with my sadness, bullshit fakers, enchanted kingdoms, the fashion victims chew their charcoal teeth. Like, yes, this is so me. Yeah, I really fucking love that song. Like that's despite what I can say about Bullet with Butterfly Wings and Jelly Belly and Tonight, all the other classics, 0 for me is just a fucking phenomenal song. That gets an A+, that song, in my mind.
Fair.
Now, we do have a second album, and this second album we're going to be a lot more positive about, I reckon, overall.
I think we were pretty positive about Mellon Collie overall. Way more than I thought we were going to be. But...
Yeah, I think we have a lot less. Well, I have no criticisms about the next album.
Yeah, the next album is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, the next album is the album that propelled this band. So Radiohead, The Bends.
Yeah.
Again, 1995, 25th anniversary at this point. It's the worst part. It's like I'm on a podcast going, what the fuck do you say about an album like this?
Dude, it's just, the thing is, it's not just the album as well, it's Radiohead. They are such a phenomenal band. Like, we mentioned it earlier, they do what they want. They're so fucking creative. Tom York is just like a kind of musical genius, and he's got the most phenomenal voice that's really unique as well. But like, they have no boundaries, and like, all of the albums sound so different. And this is probably their most generic kind of, apart from their first album, but this album is much more like rock, but they still throw in a lot of cool experimental stuff in there. Whereas when you get to like a OK Computer, they're just doing some wild shit, which is so cool. But
I think on OK Computer you've got like Fitter, Happier as well, which is just like the old tech speak on a computer.
Yeah,
Fitter,
exactly.
Happier, more productive.
Yeah,
like a rat in a cage, or like a cat in.
Very good. That's a very good impression.
Thank you. I don't know how well it's going to come out on the recording side of it, but I'll find out. But yeah, that thing you touched on it a little bit there, saying about it's more straightforward rock, which I agree with to an extent. I think contextually you've got to look at it as well. So the first album, Pablo Honey, which I actually like. I think it's a really good album.
It's good, but it's just people know it for Creep. And that's why this album's called The Bends, isn't it?
Believe so.
Yeah, so I think I read that, like, because obviously the bends are like what happens to divers, and they come up, they rise to the top too quickly, and it gets them fucking ill. And,
I'm pretty sure, if I remember rightly, I could be wrong on this, but this is a random thing about the bends and what divers get. I'm pretty sure Bill Bailey got it.
Oh, really?
At one point. I think it was Bill Bailey. I'm pretty sure I remember him talking about it on QI. If I'm wrong, but it was like something like his eyeball is like puffed up.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. Like, it's not supposed to be a pleasant experience at all. But like, they got pissed off because everyone just knew them for Creep, which is this grungy teenage angsty song. It's a great song, but like, it is very, very like you're a teenager and you hate the world, and I'm a creep. And they hated the fact that they were just basically known and rose and got so big based off of one song when they knew that they were really talented.
I think the problem is like the creep stigma stuck around them for a long, long time. Like if you talk to anyone about Radiohead, the first thing they sort of think of is, oh, that's depressive, suicidal band, aren't they?
Yeah, because they're like so not.
Yeah, there's a lot more energy. Like yes, some of their songs have like the Smiths kind of thing where they can sound sad and melancholy, but melancholy.
Yeah. But the thing is like Creep is such a basic, sad rock song,
and
they are far from a basic band. Like their song structures, their timings, their how creative they are. Like it's crazy that Creep is a really fucking good song, and it's probably one of their least interesting songs, especially when you
Yeah.
look at their big hits.
Well, the thing about Creep as well is I'm pretty sure, I don't know how apocryphal this tale is. I can't remember who told it or the exact quote, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere at some point. It's me saying, like, I'm about to tell a story. It could be bullshit, but I'm going to tell it anyway. When they were recording Creep, must have been Johnny Greenwood on guitar. I think he hated the song when they were recording it. So
Yeah.
do you know when it goes into the chorus and suddenly that big distorted guitar goes like,
Yeah.
sugar, 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 and then it launches into the chorus? That was him trying to fucking mess with the song and just like, I don't like this. Sugar.
And it sounds so good.
It sounds amazing, yeah.
That's the
But I don't
thing.
know. Like I said, I can't remember my exact source for that. I'm pretty sure it's on like Wikipedia or something like that. So it could be
Yeah.
apocryphal. But the thing is, because they felt stigmatized by Creep, and that was all they were known for, despite Pablo Honey having some good songs on it as well.
Mm.
They were pissed off, and that was their first album.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
by the time they get to the second album, they're already like deep in a depression. They can't really be asked to do much. And it wasn't until they sort of played London Astoria in '95 and sort of renewed their desire to record, which the Astoria's like. The Astoria is a historic fucking venue. That's where Manic Street Preachers had their meltdown before Richie Edwards disappeared, and
Yeah.
and that gig for Radiohead had the opposite effect. It sort of galvanized them and pushed them on to record what is a fucking masterpiece for your second album, which is your
Yeah.
hardest album.
Which is crazy. And that's the thing. So if the one thing I always think about when I think about Radiohead is like, I mean, I alluded it earlier when I was talking about, musical artists being artists. And if there's ever a band that were actual artists, it would be Radiohead, with just how they try to push the envelope with how they create music, how they mess around with it, and they just do some crazy stuff. And you can just tell that they're doing it because they're just interested in noise, and they're not necessarily interested in becoming mainstream or becoming overly successful. I mean, Tom York, if you see him in interviews, he's fucked up. Like he's a weird man.
I mean, that's harsh. I just think he's generally publicly shy.
That's true. That's true. No, I don't mean it.
I think you're looking at him just because he's got like a lazy eye or whatever.
No, I
like,
don't mean.
you
I don't.
fucking mental.
I'm not looking at. I don't
Get
mean
away
it.
from him. He's an axe murderer.
I don't mean it as a negative way. In that, like, oh, look at him. Like, I don't mean to take the piss out of it. Like, no, but like you can tell that he's got a stupidly creative mind, like an insanely creative mind. He's a bit of a genius, and you just listen to him talk, and you're like so fascinated in how he views music and the way he approaches it. And this is what sets them apart from every other band that tried to do the same shit. Like when I was listening to this album, because this album fits really in that 90s style, but it definitely does its own thing with it. And every time I listen to this album, because I listen to this album quite a bit, I always think this is what Blur tried to be.
Well, Blair
and couldn't.
Blair tried to be the intellectual version of Oasis.
Yeah, completely. And I like Blur quite a bit, but they do a lot of really cool experimental stuff as well. But like it's just this album did everything Blur tries to do or tried to do at that time way better than they could ever do it.
Well, I'm gonna back up my statement a little bit, because I think saying that when I say intellectual version of Oasis, I don't mean musically they were the same. They were quite different from Oasis, but yeah, they were sort of middle class, where Oasis were working class.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like Britpop kicks off around this era. You will know better than I, because I was never an Oasis fan or anything like that. But what year did Morning Glory come out? Was that 94, 96?
I think it's 94.
So, yeah. So
I think I could be wrong.
I mean, I've got a fucking computer right here. I could just look. But that's the thing, like Britpop took over.
Yeah.
95 actually, so we could have done a 25th anniversary of that as well.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it would have made more sense.
It's a fucking great album as well.
Well, I think at some point we will end up doing a Britpop episode anyway, but the there was this weird thing with Britpop though. You had two bands at the forefront. You had Oasis and Blur, and it was that rivalry. But underneath that, like I say underneath that, not in terms of success, but just in terms of public opinion, you had the Manics were sort of the third wheel.
Yeah.
And then you've got Radiohead.
Yeah.
Because Radiohead sort of managed to deviate away from that because they were just seen as sort of like the sad band.
Yeah, but those two as well, Manic and Radiohead, they're the ones doing the really fucking interesting stuff. And I love Blur and I love Oasis and I really love that. I love Britpop in general because it came up with some really fucking interesting, cool tracks. But you know, in terms of pure talent, to be honest, Manic and Radiohead were just miles above Blur and Oasis, and
and they both marched to the beat of their own drum.
completely.
It was never like, you know, the easiest criticism that you can always throw at Oasis is they were sort of Beatles derivative.
Yeah, and do you know what? Like,
Which is
and
cruel in a lot of ways, but
yeah,
you know, when Don't Look Back in Anger is, you know, in terms of chords, exactly the fucking same as Let It Be.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And then
funnily enough,
Radiohead.
that's the only Beatles song I can play on guitar.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah,
But
that's
Radiohead made their own lane as well, and like, and loads of bands have been inspired from them. I mean, I can't stand Muse, but but Muse to me tried to be Radiohead.
Funnily enough, I was going to bring up Muse because there is a parallel between them. Now, Muse did come around a little bit later in terms of their first album, which was 1999, Showbiz.
Yeah.
Now, see, I don't think they are trying to be Radiohead. Like they formed around 94.
But they fit in that lane. It's the same lane.
Yeah, this is where I'm going to go with the parallel. So yeah, Muse were around when Radiohead were Radiohead, a little bit older, who started a little bit before.
Yeah.
So I don't think Muse were trying to ape what Radiohead were doing, but it was just they both had similar ideas and similar ways they want to progress their careers. And for me, I fucking love Muse. I think they are phenomenal and extremely creative and talented. And Chris Wolfenstill, the bassist, his fucking bass lines are phenomenal.
That's true. Like musically, Muse are really, really good. I just think they're quite basic. And for me, I always go, why would I want to listen to Muse when I can listen to Radiohead? Because they do, in my head at least, they fit very much in the same category. I just think Radiohead are a much better band.
Well, I think
I prefer Tom York's singing voice and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they're easy bands to compare to.
Mm-hmm.
I think is what we're trying to say. But for me, the parallel becomes when Muse released Showbiz, it was very much the same as Pablo Honey in the way it was received.
Yeah.
You know, it was this band, they were just throwing the songs that they had played together and it didn't really hit or catch on. And for Muse, then their second album being Origin Symmetry, which has, you know, Newborn and Plug-in Baby and the stuff that pushed them sort of further up. The Bends was exactly the same for Radiohead, but I think to a more stratospheric degree for Radiohead. Because I don't think Muse really got massive until you had what's the third album called? Absolution. I don't know,
but you get like Knights of Sidonia and stuff like that.
That doesn't come to a little bit later. So
right.
That's Black Holes and Revelations. So
But
yeah,
that's the album I know of that blew them the fuck up.
Yeah, that definitely did. Yeah, because you have Starlight and all that on there as well. But the third album, yeah, it's Absolution. It has Stockholm Syndrome. It has.
That's actually a really good album.
Time Is Running Out as well, which was the first Kerrang hit for them that I remember. I say Kerrang hit because me and Connor grew up on Kerrang. Kerrang TV and Scuzz. Scuzz came later. Scuzz was awesome. Scuzz became the one to watch after Kerrang started playing fucking Bowling for Soup.
Yeah. That's so on point.
Well, Blink 182 and all that shit. Fucking hell. You had to go to Scuzz if you wanted a bit of Slipknot. Again, another band that we will get to eventually. Now, the Bends, because we talked about all the other bands, that I want to talk about Johnny Greenwood. Guitarist.
Phenomenal.
Well, guitarist, he does everything. He's a fucking musical genius.
All of them are. Like, that's the thing about Radiohead. They're insanely, as individuals, they are insanely talented. And they're like musical geniuses.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing, the bass lines in theory aren't that hard, but they work so well because they fit.
Yeah,
Which is ideally what you want as a bassist. You
completely.
don't need to be doing ridiculously hard stuff.
They all serve this, like, that's the thing with Radiohead. It's like they're never really overly flashy. Sometimes they are, each musician, but like they all serve the songs perfectly.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's the weird thing as well. You think they've got 3 guitarists, and they pretty much have done since the start.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've got Johnny Greenwood, Ed O'Brien plays guitar, and Tom York obviously plays guitar in a bunch as well.
Yeah.
Bassist is Colin Greenwood.
Yeah.
Which is a relation to Johnny, funnily enough. But Johnny Greenwood, for me, he has. So when I tend to think of like the most inspirational guitarists for me, as much as I can sit here and I'm sure we will talk about him again at some point. If you've listened to the very first episode of the Iron Maiden anthology, you would know. Dave Murray, Adrian Smith, like I love them as guitarists. You know, I used to love Kirk Hammett. I love old Kirk Hammett. You know, Dave Mustaine's has some massive riffs and great things like that. But for me, if like you talk about inspirational guitarists, John Frusciante is my top one because he's my guy, you know.
Yeah.
Johnny Marr is number 2. I think Johnny Marr is one of the most talented songwriters of all time. The way he plays guitar is so unique, but it's a way that influenced the next generation, which was
Completely.
Johnny Greenwood.
Yeah.
Which one's a good Gallagher? Noel that's
Gallagher,
what,
yeah.
But
but Johnny Marr influenced Britpop like in a massive way. The way that all of these bands played guitar was just like Johnny Marr.
Well, yeah, Graham Coxon from Blur was a fairly unique guitarist as well, so it all fits. But for me, Johnny Greenwood has that unique ability of being able to play like Johnny Marr, which nobody else can really do. The way he sort of a lot of arpeggio riffs, it's not a lot of power chords, it's more everything's moving, it's fluid, it's he plays within the same boundaries that he's setting up for the song, but there's so much movement with it.
Yeah, there's so much playing. Nice.
Well, I think we talked about it with Squire for
Stone Roses.
That's the Badgers. Yeah. I knew their name.
But like John Squire is very, very similar to Johnny Marr as well, in my opinion, the way they play. Yeah. And it's all this style. It's all the same time period. Like Stone Roses is just a little bit before this.
Well, yeah, because they were late 80s, early 90s. So.
But then the Second Coming, their second album came out in 94.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's that sort of mix of similar sort of time periods, and you can trace that DNA back 100% to Johnny Marr. But with Johnny Greenwood, his guitar playing and his musicianship is just fucking fantastic. Whether you're talking about High and Dry, Planet Telex, or Fake Plastic Trees, or the 2 songs that have like my 2 favorite guitar parts on it, Street Spirit. That fucking if you listen to the acoustic fucking version of that as well, where it's just Tom York and Johnny.
What film is Street Spirit in? I was listening to it the other day and I was like, man, I know this from a film as well. It definitely feels like it's...
I don't know. I can try and find out.
Really iconically as well, but I can't. That's an amazing track.
The only song where I think I can actually hit the notes vocally, and I'm not going to try.
Tom York's an amazing singer though, and he's got such a unique voice, but he is so deceitful with how high and how he uses his falsetto. It's so impressive.
Ridiculous voice.
It's insane, and it's so adaptable. Like he does such crazy big things with it, and then he goes so small with it, and there's high pitched vocals are just unbelievable. He's so good. I admire him so much. I'm sorry for the comment I made about him being a weirdo in interviews.
Well, that's the thing. So whilst I'm looking up to see if Street Spirit was actually used in a film, which I can't seem to find any evidence of, but I'm gonna keep looking. I have just come across a quote from Tom York about Street Spirit in which he says Street Spirit is our purest song, but I didn't write it. It wrote itself. We were just its messengers, its biological catalysts.
That's what I mean, man. They're such creative assholes. They're such pretentious artists, but I fucking love it.
Its core is a complete mystery to me. I wouldn't ever try to write something that hopeless. All of our saddest songs have somewhere in them at least a glimmer of resolve. Street Spirit has no resolve. It is the dark tunnel without the light at the end. I detach my emotional radar from that song, or I couldn't play it. I'd crack. I'd break down on stage. That is why the lyrics are just a bunch of mini stories or visual images as opposed to a cohesive explanation of its meaning. I used images set to the music that I thought would convey the emotion. Fuck me, he goes on.
Mate, climb out your own ass, Tom.
I would convey the emotional entirety of the lyric and music working together. That's what's meant by all these things are one to swallow whole. I meant the emotional entirety because I didn't have it in me to articulate the emotion. I would crack. Our fans are braver than I to let that song penetrate them. Or maybe they don't realise what they're listening to. They don't realise its spirit is about staring the fucking devil right in the eyes and knowing no matter what the hell you do, he'll get the last laugh. The devil really will get the last laugh in all cases with how he comes on. There's another paragraph.
But that's what I mean, man. Like, he's such an eccentric prick, and I love him. I think he's so great.
It goes on. This is my favourite little bit here. It's why we play it towards the end of our sets. It drains me and it shakes me and it hurts like hell every time I play it, looking out at thousands of people cheering and smiling, oblivious to the tragedy of its meaning, like when you're going to have your dog put down and it's wagging its tail on the way there.
Oh my god, that's so sad.
That's what they all look like, and it breaks my heart. I wish that song hadn't picked us as its catalyst, and so I don't claim it. It asks too much. I didn't write that song. Yeah, he's
woo. I told you, man, he's a fucking weirdo, but he's so good. Like
to be fair, I don't know when that quote would have come out either. So
that is pure pretentious drivel. Like, but I love it.
Hold on a second. I think I might have found something about where it might have been used. Actually, I could be wrong. Carry on.
But yeah, this is what I mean when I say like they are like pure artists, and yeah, it gets a bit pretentious, it gets a bit much, but at the end of the day, the music is great. The music is so fucking good. This album hasn't got a bad aspect to it whatsoever.
Ooh, hold on a second. I think I've found where it was used. And do you want to know where?
Where?
It was quite a big film, actually.
Yeah, I know it.
It wasn't. What I will say is, it wasn't a Radiohead version. It was a cover.
Right.
It seems. Mad Max Fury Road.
Right. Yes. Fair. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to double check because I've only just seen like a. This is on the fly. We're doing this. I only saw that a cover was potentially used in the film.
Yeah.
But I can't. I'm trying to find the actual soundtrack from Fury Road, see if it's on there. But yeah, Christ, I'm trying to think. Fury Road's a really fucking good film as well.
Excellent film.
Unfortunately, I only saw it after I watched it when I had my appendix out.
Right.
And I was on morphine, and I was coming off anesthesia, and I had my sleeping tablets. I was high as a motherfucker.
Yeah, you were.
Oh, I was off my tits. It was amazing. I have no memory of that day either. As one of my friends like to remind me, like, I just kept saying the same shit over and over because I'd forgotten I'd already said it. Yeah, people have your appendix removed. It's fucking amazing. It's a beautiful feeling. So it wasn't on the official soundtrack as well, so I don't really know where it was from. Okay.
It's okay, man. It's okay. We can drop that.
Apparently it was covered by. No, that's the person who uploaded it. Wait there. I will find it.
No, leave it.
I need to find it now. Looks like it was definitely used in the film, but it wasn't on the original motion picture soundtrack, I don't believe.
Right. That's fair.
But hey ho, this could be spurious, and I could just be trusting Reddit to be accurate.
Yeah, fair. But yes, as I say, it's just a pretty perfect album. It's hard to say anything bad about it.
Oh god, yeah, and like we haven't even touched on other songs like My Iron Lung.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Dude. But that song is directly like about Creep and about the fucking rise to fame that they didn't want. Well, they it's not that they didn't want fame, it's just they feel like they got famous out of the shit that they didn't want to get famous out of.
Oh yeah.
They're being appreciated in the wrong way.
Well, yeah, and they're like that whole thing of My Iron Lung was sort of like, you know, being stuck in a claustrophobic world where Creep is your only claim to fame, which must have been fucking horrible.
Yeah, especially when they didn't love the song that much. And Creep's a great song, but it's just I feel them, man, because not enough people know enough Radiohead.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people as well, like Creep would be off-putting.
Yeah, it doesn't
That's
reflect them. It doesn't reflect them.
well, yeah, which is a shame because like you do think about some of their singles and how they're like a lot of their singles probably all have that similar sort of thing where they are somewhat depressing. Like No Surprises would be the easiest parallel, I think.
Yeah.
But then you've got other stuff like Paranoid Android and Karma Police and shit like that, which is awesome as well.
Yeah.
And it's just they're just phenomenal.
They're just great. I mean, and this is, I'll admit, like, they're so good that they got 2 perfect albums. Because I find this album perfect, but it's not my favorite Radiohead album.
I've worked it out. So it was the trailer for Mad Max.
Right. Okay. Cool.
It was a cover by a band called Superhuman.
Fair. Yeah, I must have seen that then. But yeah, Street Spirit's such a good song. It has such atmosphere, man. And that kills me with a song. When you can create, like, a song can be good, but then it becomes brilliant for me when it has this whole aura or atmosphere about it that you really almost feel like you're in a movie or you're in a scene somewhere.
Well, like Tom York said, it's like staring the devil right in the fucking eye.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, no, Street Spirit has this really dark and powerful like atmosphere of oblivion. It would have been a perfect fucking song for the Maliks to write for the Holy Bible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's the highest praise I can give anything in my world. But like even stuff like Fake Plastic Trees as well, and again High and Dry, bends. I think we're literally all my notes next to each song
gushing over it.
Well, yeah, usually what I tend to do just to sort of try and give me a trigger or to remember, because again I listened to this weeks back. I usually just write like a little couple of words, excellent, great, whatever. And all of them have some variation of excellent on there, which is that's the best thing I can do for an album. And do you know what the best thing is about it?
What?
It's only 12 songs long.
Mm-hmm.
It's short album.
So it's fucking short album you can listen to and dig out on and have a fucking amazing time.
Well, exactly.
Learn from them, Smashing Pumpkins.
Well, and that's the thing as well. Like I can understand people's criticisms of like, well, they are quite, they are quite morose in terms of like songs and the music at times, but it's such a fucking good album. Yeah, such a phenomenal album. I love it.
And as I said a minute ago as well, I don't know if you were listening fully because you were trying to research.
I was still listening.
Oh, fair. But yeah, it's crazy that they're so great that this isn't even their best album, in my opinion. Like, and it's a fucking perfect album.
Is yours the same as mine then? OK Computer.
OK Computer is one of the best albums I think ever made in any band. Ever.
I agree with that. Like again, it's the main thing you want from like the way to judge for me a great or phenomenal album is you're always likely to know the singles from an album.
Yeah.
If the rest of the album can be better than the singles you've heard, then it's a phenomenal album for the most part, I would say.
Completely. And it's about identity as well. Like you hear any song from OK Computer and you know it's from OK Computer. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't belong anywhere else, sort of thing.
Well, I think that's a sort of microcosm of it. I think you get that from a whole with bands. Like you could listen to any Radiohead song and go, Radiohead. Even if you don't hear Tom York singing, you can tell musically what's Radiohead and what's not.
Completely. It's the same with Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like,
well, I think that might be the issue we had with Smashing Pumpkins. Really, is a lot of those songs could have been written by anybody.
Yeah,
not to deny that they're good.
It fits too well within its genre.
Yeah,
it doesn't explore enough.
Well, it doesn't even need to explore. It's just there's something tonally that certain bands will have where, like Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, and all that. You could listen to any of them, and they could all have the same chugging riff, but you would know which one's Metallica straight away.
Completely. And I think this is what I was getting at with Nirvana. It's like the second you hear any beat from a Nirvana song, you know it's a Nirvana song.
Well, yeah, it doesn't.
Got so much identity in their music.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're listening to Breed or if you're listening to Francis Farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can tell it's Nirvana. And I think that's probably the thing with any band that rises to prominence or any fantastic band. I could listen to any indie band from 2005 through 2007, and I could point out and sit there and go, well, that's the Arctic Monkeys, that's the Cribs, that's the Libertines, and you'd have a lot that sound like those bands, but they don't really have that identity. Like Pigeon Detectives, who the fuck gives a shit about the Pigeon Detectives? They don't have a unique sound.
Yeah, and obviously Smashing Pumpkins do, because they have become as big as they do, and like we said, he's got one of the most unique voices. However, it's just there's also levels within that. So like with Arctic Monkeys, it's an Arctic Monkeys song, and that's step one. But then there's a few more steps that you then take past identity that really make you one of the best bands, and that's where bands like Iron Maiden or Nirvana or artists like Jimi Hendrix and artists like Radiohead, that's where they sit on that pantheon, because it's not just the identity, it's then how fucking amazing that identity is.
I would say it's the difference between collective identity of the band and the DNA of the band. The DNA, it's hardwired in, it's the thing that drives them over that edge.
Yeah. But the Bends is
we've turned into Tom York over it.
We have. But the Bends is easy an A+. We both agree with that, right?
Yeah, my notepad here. I'll show you the proof. I don't know if you can see that well, but it's an A+.
Yeah, it's an A+ from start to finish. I don't even want to go into the songs because every song's great. There's no highlights.
I reckon, with a gun to your head, I reckon you'd say Street Spirit.
Favourite song? Probably, because it does send me to a place.
And do you know what? Do you know what? I would say as well. That would be mine. Closely followed by My Iron Lung.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this more on. It'll be next week's podcast when we talk about the second part of the Maiden anthology. One of the ways I can judge how great a song is how quickly I pick up a guitar or bass.
Yeah.
As soon as I heard I can't do it with Street Spirit. Like when I first heard Street Spirit, I picked up the guitar, but I can't play it. I can play the bass, I just can't play the guitar.
Yeah,
because it's a fucker to play. Because it's like looking the devil in the fucking eye. So My Iron Lung. As soon as I heard it, it's like, I love the. That's the thing. They fuck around with effects. Without sounding like it's taking away from the music.
Yeah, learn from that, Carrick Hammett, you fucking prick.
But that's the as soon as I heard like My Iron Lung, it's that arpeggio riff again on the G rather than A minor for Street Spirit. As soon as I heard it, it's like I grabbed my guitar, fucking started playing. I can rock that song now.
Yeah, it's also as well something worth mentioning actually quickly as well. It's one thing that Radiohead nail perfectly every time is their production. When you're talking about the effects and everything like that they add to songs, but it's the production on their albums, especially from the Bends onwards, is just the best production you'll get on any album.
Well, yeah, because obviously Pablo Honey, it sounded just quite messy, I think, overall. Yeah. Part of the reason it doesn't hold up as well is everything else they do.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we can really say for the Bends. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it is. And I can't wait for us to do basically the exact same conversation for OK Computer one day.
Yeah, we've got to wait till 25th anniversary of that, I'm afraid, mate.
Yeah.
But in terms of episodes coming up, after this one, it will be part 2 of the Iron Maiden anthology.
Yeah.
Which will be a it's 3 albums we're looking at. We're looking at Number of the Beast, fucking Number of the Beast, people. Peace of Mind, fucking Peace of Mind, people. And fucking Power Slave. Christ, I'm really turning into a host. This is great. I've evolved. Only other things I think we've really got to say before we say goodbye is obviously follow us on Twitter @songs_us.
Yeah.
Follow us on Facebook, The Songs That Made Us. YouTube, The Songs That Made Us. Or get in contact, email us. What's our email address? songs@madeuspod@com. I've got it. Get in contact. Let us know what you think. Follow us. No, we need to record something else in a minute, which I'll tell you about after the podcast.
Okay.
But aside from that, have you got any last words to say about the Bends other than it's a masterpiece? Fucking listen to it.
Just listen to Radiohead. That's what I'd say. It's Radiohead. It annoys me because they're obviously not underrated and everyone fucking loves them, but not enough people love them.
I think they're underrated by those who don't know the majority of their works.
That's the thing. Is people just know Creep, and they are the second you start to listen to more Radiohead, you go, oh my god, these guys are fucking unbelievable.
No, just to put another spin on that as well, actually. Like, I think growing up, you were more a Radiohead guy than I was. I didn't really get into Radiohead until the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So for me, like, listening to the Benzene Fold, that was a completely brand new experience. Like, I'd never listened to the Benzene Fold. I'd listened to a bunch of their songs. Like Street Spirit, I'd known a little bit before.
Yeah.
From playing it on Rocksmith, of all things.
Yeah.
So for me, I've listened to OK Computer through several times since I started getting properly into Radiohead, but it's a brand new experience for me. And as a fan of music and as a fan of songwriting and lyrics, it's a masterpiece.
It is. It's fucking all of them. Tom York, I love you. All of them, I love them. I love them so much. And like, it's real experimenting with music and coming up with good shit. If you hear about their like stories that they do in the studio of how they make weird noises and stuff, it's really admirable.
And I think on that note, people, we're going to say sayonara because we've got nothing else to talk about. It was a great album. Oh, peace out, freak bitches. No, that's Joe Rogan's. Right there. What you can't see is the fact I'm throwing up the devil horns as I'm doing that as well. Nah, people...
looking them right in the eye.
It's like looking the devil right in the fucking eye. Seriously, people, thank you for listening, and goodbye.